Morning. Good morning. We're starting up normal. They don't tend to come to meetings on time, so we're a few minutes late. So we're probably gonna go till 5 or 6 tonight, so. Anyway, I'll give you a little background. I'm Dr. Paul Detloff. I was born on a flat land, Minnesota farm, really close to Iowa. We had 5 feet of black dirt. I was born in 42. I was a war baby. And every farm in southern Minnesota and Iowa had 3 things, if not 4. They had a chicken coop, and that was the wife. They had pigs. We were 14 miles from Austin, Minnesota, where the home of George A. Hormel, and everybody had pigs. And we had about 12 cows. And it was before AI, so you traded bulls. So we had shorthorns, and then all the neighbors got a good, nice Guernsey bull from UCF. My great-grandfather came into Minnesota in 1858 with a cart, an ox cart, and wheat and Durham cattle. They came in, they went down the Erie Canal, Rochester, New York, and then they ended up in Madison, Wisconsin for a few years, and they got 160 acres from Ulysses S. Grant. Eventually, that was in 58, Grant wasn't president yet, so. Tell her I'm busy, okay?
She's fine.
Anyway, that doesn't bother me. I'm used to being yelled at and pushed around because I've got a wife and 3 daughters. So, anyway, I went to University of Minnesota, graduated in vet school in 1967, bought out a one-man practice that was older, outdated, and it was in 2 counties in Wisconsin that were loaded with cattle. And post-World War II, they upped the training in veterinary medicine, and that our training was parallel to the medical world. And they really put a big emphasis on it. And so now new graduates don't go out and start on their own because it's so diverse. But out of my class of 49, there was 8 of us that went right out and started on their own. I built a 4-man practice. We had 4 red Dodge pickups, and we were 4 firemen going out of town every morning at 7 o'clock, and we were putting fires out on everybody's farm. And we were crisis management practice. That's all changed. It's now preventative. And so it's a whole different world out there. I practice, I'm a German in the trenches, so don't tell me I can't do it. And I wore my head out. You train your left hand if you're right-handed. Every animal that's sick gets a complete and thorough physical, which includes a rectal palpation. You can learn a lot of stuff on the rectal palpation. You can feel the right kidney, you can feel the lymph nodes, you can feel the septum. You can feel it's revealing. And if you don't do a rectal palpation, you're not giving a complete thorough physical. Every cow you see, and if you miss it once or twice, it comes back to bite you because you missed something. Pregnancy checking became the norm. We were trained on a heifer that's 31 days pregnant. We could pick up her pregnancy with a fetal membrane slip. There were 4 positive signs of pregnancy, and me and my 3 partners were excellent palpators for pregnancy. So I had probably pushed off of my right foot in 35 years, probably a million times. And they eroded my hip. And, well, you remember how I went around Darby. I practiced 2 years too long. You know what kept me in practice 2 years? A homeopathy called hypericum. How many people know what homeopathy is? You know what hypericum is?
St. John's word.
No. And I would stick 10 of those pills in my mouth after every call, and I'd drive 3 miles and my hip pain would be gone. Don't tell me homeopathy doesn't work. It just kept me in practice 2 years. And then my shoulder, after these million palpations started getting out. I had 22 farms in my practice I sold my clinic, and I went back on my own with my wife and my family, and God, I lost my train of thought here. This is really frustrating. What was I talking about there?
I lost my mind.
Going on your business on your own.
St. John's Wort.
St. John's Wort.
22.
Okay, I have 22 farmers who are organic. You're gonna have to excuse me, I'm not 21 anymore. So anyway, my first call in 1988 was on a farm. My best farmer, decided he was gonna go organic. Organic was in its very, very, very infancy. The start of organics in the dairy world was at below La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was like 60 miles from me. And in the 80s, the dairy world was very dramatic. The price would be way out, it would be way down. In the 80s, there were many, many, many bankruptcies in Wisconsin, many bankruptcies. And so these 7 farmers get together at Vernon County Courthouse. What do we do about this? And they said, we need a value-added milk. And we were starting to see some side effects. Chloramphenicol had been removed. Dihydrostreptomycin had been removed. Chloramphenicol would cause aplastic anemia in humans if they ate enough pigs pork with chloramphenicol. We used it in the dairy world. When I first started practice in '67, we never dumped milk for any drugs at all. We gave them the whole gamut of drugs and it went right into the food line. And we learned that doesn't work. And so, anyway, these 7 farmers said, what are we going to do? He said, I don't think we should use these antibiotics. Okay, they're antibiotics. We shouldn't be using hormones. They're the same as us. No hormones, okay? I don't think we should use any synthesized molecule in the test tube because you have side effects. The aspirin in willow bark doesn't bother you. The aspirin in acetylsalicylic acid from Bayer causes ulcers. And if you give a dairy cow these big 240 grain ulcers, what the number, personal observation, I was the most reliable source of truth. When I heard somebody would go over 6 big aspirin pills, you'd start seeing black, cold black milk. Why? Because they had a stomach ulcer they were eating. And that same thing in humans. Side effect of aspirins. You take too many aspirins for if you're not on Eliquis or these new drugs for Coumadin, not Coumadin, the rat poison. Anyway, you just start getting Paxil all over. Aspirin is really reactive. So anyway, they set out these rules. Oh, and we can't have synthesized fertilizer on their fields. No urea for nitrogen. So they had a value-added deal. They started, these 7 guys had a contract with a little cheese plant, and they brought their milk in, and they made cheese. Their marketing were these 7 guys. And they had one guy they hired from Florida, George Seaman, who was similar to Lee Iacocca. He had a mind on it. He was a marketer. And he took Organic Valley to $1.1 billion before he retired. He was the man that drove the organics. So the organic standards started. California had some, Pennsylvania had some, Wisconsin had some, and they said in 2002, we have to equal the playing field. So they said, we'll write up, the USDA, Department of Agriculture, said, we'll come out with a comprehensive program for the United States. Okay, good. We'll all be in the same ballparks. They looked in Europe, and Europe still has, their standards are, you can use all the drugs known if you triple the withholding time. And Organic Valley in California said, you've got to be kidding me. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can be organic. We don't want that. And this was before computers. So there was a telephone campaign and a letter writing campaign. I mean, everybody called their representative or their assemblyman and said, hey, this is ludicrous. So they threw up the USDA did this and they said, okay, we're gonna appoint a 15-member board called the National Organic Standards Board, and you tell us what you want. Our CEO, George Stevens, sat on that board, and it's still functioning. The problem we have now is the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, Sonny Perdue, all the way back, are in the back pocket of corporate America. So instead of 15 farmers or people in the industry, we now have people on from drug companies and Kraft Foods and that. And the standards are being challenged. The pasture rule, these 5,000 cow herds do not meet the requirements, and the Department of Agriculture doesn't have the wherewithal to shut them down. So let the buyer beware, buy local. There's a huge movement going on right now. We do need a different Secretary of Agriculture before this is going to happen. Vilsack was for Obama, now he's for Biden. And Sonny Perdue was a veterinarian. He had the gall when Vietnam said, we're not going to allow glyphosate in this country. He had the gall to say, you're going to starve. If you don't use technology, you're going to starve. Well, wouldn't you think Vietnam, after Agent Orange and Agent Black, might not want glyphosate? You know? And he said, you're going to learn to produce food in a test tube. You're going to have milk and meat and plants in a test tube. And he's the Secretary of Agriculture. I'm sorry, but he's a veterinarian. So we have a challenging part right now in this organic world. Big money is trying to control us. So I started making things. This guy in '88, he was working with a bunch of my farmers in the soils. How many of you know the Elbrecht system for soils? Elbrecht system, Elbrecht was an agronomist, plant pathologist at the University of Missouri, and he says the NPK system is wrong. You take alfalfa off, you got to put the potassium back. It's the only thing they worry about. So they use potassium chloride. Why potassium? Because post-World War II, what's gunpowder? Potassium nitrate. And so these companies that were making gunpowder have no market. And they said, let's make potassium chloride. What's potassium chloride? Well, the potassium makes a plant really dark green, and it grows with its hollow stem, there's less energy, and it's loaded with potassium. Now, when you get a forage that's low calcium, high potassium, that's a veterinarian's dream. Because you get huge erythema, you get milk fevers that don't respond to calcium, you get poor quality colostrum, you get weak calves, and you put it on you cut your first crop of alfalfa and you put it on, and it grows dark green, and it's poor quality feed. It's not balanced. And so that's the damn lie. They say, well, if you take 200 pounds of potassium off, you got to put 200 back. Wrong. You already got too much potassium in the Midwest. We need some calcium. We need some phosphorus. So I came home after '88, seeing this cow. This cow in July had twins, placenta hanging out. She'd stepped on her right front quarter, and she had an E. coli mastitis as hard as a desk. And she wanted to die. Heart rate of 100. I gave her a physical. When I got there, his name was Bob. I said, hi, Bob, what's new? I always ask, what's new? Oh, my boy Tim did the last thing, and my daughter, she did the high hurdles or whatever. Oh, we went to the Smith wedding and on and on. We had 6 kids, and they were all pretty good, weren't they, Darby?
He says so.
So anyway, I go home, and then I said, okay, when I get a physical, I step back and I tell them what I found. Here's what I found on physical. Rheumatoid going twice a minute, respiration is 30, heart 60, we got kidney infection, or we have ketosis. Here's what we're going to do. I wanted my client to know what I found, why we're going to treat her, or if I couldn't make a diagnosis, I would narrow it down. She's either got heartburn or she's got ketosis, so we're gonna treat her with a magnet and this, and if she doesn't respond, I want you to know what happened to her, tell me, so we can get it right the next time. So anyway, I stepped back and I said, Bob, we gotta throw the kitchen sink at this girl, she's gonna wanna die. He said, okay, and I said, I want you to remove antibiotics, he said, you can't do that. But, he said, I said, antibiotics, he said, you can't use antibiotics, I don't know if you can. I want to give her some dicardial to bring the temperature down. I don't know if you can do that. That drug's illegal and gone today. I wanted to give her antihistamines. No, you can't do that. I said, what in the world can I give your cow? I said, I want to put some antibiotics in that uterus. He said, you can't do that. He said, you can give her fluids, you can give her energy. Really? I gave her a bottle of lactated trainers and some glucose and drove away. He was so far ahead of me. He knew homeopathy. He had his own little natural. He was trained by his grandpa and his dad, and he was way ahead. I go home to my lovely wife, who's German, by the way, and I said, honey, I've got a problem. We've got a problem. Why? Because I said, this organics isn't going to be good for us. I haven't got any tools for them. And my wife said, why don't you learn something? I got no sympathy from her. And that started my quest. The first book I read was The Scientific Validation of Aloe Vera.